Hello there. This is going to be a interview and a deep, in-depth conversation on Zachary Perkins' novel that is coming out tomorrow. How much time do you have? Just getting started into it. I've read the whole entire book and I'm going through the whole entire thing. I can already tell from the beginning that you've always wanted to be a writer and you've always been very creative and super involved with film and just everything and part of that. So how has it been with this process of being a writer and like it finally coming true?
I don't know what I thought it was going to take to become a writer in my life. But I thought it was going to be much later in life. Like I thought I was going to have worked a job I hated for like 15 years. And, COVID happened and I realized time is so precious and we don't have tomorrow promise. And so I was like, I'm going to give my hand at it. And I think that what really worked for me was my vulnerability really shined through with writing, and I was really inspired by so many things that I was watching and taking in during the process of writing, especially the final season of Insecure. And after the show wrapped, Issa Rae and the cast and crew did like a documentary, and it was like the most beautiful thing ever. It was so I wanted to do what she had done for me for other people. So I think it's been the most rewarding thing like I've ever gotten the chance to do, to be honest.
It honestly has been such an experience even reading it. You go from like in-depth talks about your childhood to like funny little stories about yourself and even talking about like topics that have happened in our world today, like Black Lives Matter movement, the media, and how that affects, you know, all types of aspects of the whole entire world today, and Trump becoming, the president, and just super in-depth things that honestly need to be talked about a lot more. So already getting into that, let's talk about, your coming out story. I actually finished that chapter today. Um, and it's always that fear of being accepted, and I know you talked about that a lot, but how do you think that the community can benefit from reading this part of your story?
It's really crazy because my journey with coming out really began maybe 6 years ago. And in that time, I've already seen the space for acceptance grow tenfold. And that makes me so happy that, this generation of kids don't have to go through some of the things that I went through. They're having these conversations at much earlier ages. And I think just remembering that straight is not always like straight should not be the default for
Mhm.
everyone because we all come in different, shapes, sizes, identities, and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I wish I had just had that space to have felt like expressing my identity was okay. And I don't know if I felt that until I was on my own. And when you're an adult and you're out in the world, it's kind of like hard to hide behind the version of yourself that other people have wanted you to be and the version of yourself that people have curated for you to be. So I really had to stand on my own and, thrive in my skin for the first time. And so I wish that I'd had that a little bit earlier.
Definitely, for sure. And I think a lot of it too has to do with like toxic masculinity that's almost like taught at a young age. Like you're almost expected to act a certain way or expected to be a certain way when honestly that's not even how it is anymore. And it's really great to see that happening now in our society.
It is. And I wrote about that even in later chapters, and we can get into the specifics in a minute. But I went through something that a lot of men don't go through. And just that framing of because a lot of men don't go through this, there's not going to be that space. There's not going to be um, acceptance of it from me, from the world. So it was just something that I dealt with on my own, and I dealt with in very, poor ways. But it was the way that I had been groomed by society to handle these things and to process or not process.
Exactly. Getting into the first chapter of your book, I had these are just a couple questions that I had on, just throughout reading. But, you're a very creative person, always writing, and you wrote a bunch of scripts. I was wondering if you still have those scripts today.
So I do. I have a binder. It's actually just out of the frame. And so all of these shows that I wrote, they're just all there. I'm slowly but surely reworking them, because I wrote a show about like 20-year-olds when I was 12. And what did I know about being an adult? But now I've lived it and I'm going back and I'm like, that was so inaccurate. That was so wrong. Like, dude, come on, let's get it together. So yeah, but they're still here. I have like music that I've written, ideas for film, and they're just all in this binder. So, I have a little NFT going, if you will.
Yes, that is so awesome. So you want to incorporate those like in your future today, like you want to still try to use those, right?
Oh yeah, I think that they were strong ideas at the core. They just needed to be worked on a lot. Like they
Yeah.
needed to be doctored up heavily because again, like a 12-year-old child wrote them. But I was going somewhere. I had a vision, but the
For
vision is
sure.
clearer now.
Yeah. Who did you end up calling? I know that you called people in like companies, production companies. Who exactly do you remember who you called?
Everybody I would call, and it was so funny because I knew certain shows I wanted on certain networks, and so the first show that I wrote, I wanted it to be on either ABC or CBS, and that was it. And the internet was still in its earlier days back in this time, and so all these companies just had their numbers listed. I'm sure they're not listed anymore because of people like me who were playing on these corporations' phones repeatedly. But I called them, I called Nickelodeon, I called Disney Channel, I called any and everybody that I could find a public record for.
That is so wonderful. At such a young age to even like think of, yeah, this is gonna happen when I call.
Yeah, and then they're like, well, you need to copyright your idea. And then I look up how much that is, and it's like $500 per idea. I'm like, okay, we can go crack the piggy bank, but I doubt it's in there. So
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So into that whole entire thing in your childhood, we get to really get in depth, like, we almost go through the whole entire book with you, which is super awesome. And your family is very involved in this. So I wanted to ask questions just about your siblings and like how old are them? How old there's three of them, right?
three of them, yes.
They're all sisters. So
Yes.
what are all their names and what are their ages? And yeah.
So we have Precious,
Mhm.
who is, oh my gosh, we're all pretty close in age, so I get a little jumbled with numbers. But Precious will be 23 in May. We have Kalena, who will be 22 in November. And then we have Courtney, who will be 20 in December. So we're all
Oh,
very, very close in
very
age.
close in age for
Very
sure.
close in age, yes.
And I think that really showed like how close y'all were growing up too, for sure. Um, I feel like Precious in the book is very much like in it. I feel like y'all were probably like the closest siblings.
We
So can you
were.
just tell me about like your dynamic with your sisters? Like how was y'all's relationship with each other?
You know, we're at a point now where I would like consider them friends and like I'd be inclined to hang out with them and stuff. But back in the day, like back in the period of time that you're reading about, it
Mhm.
was anything but, it was the three of them and they were always like tag teaming and ganging up on me. And if something happened, it was like the three of their words versus mine. So even if I wasn't even at home, like I wasn't gonna get believed because you have three people saying that I did it versus me saying I had nothing to do with it. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was a little combative, but Precious and I were closer in age. We went to middle school together. I was in eighth, she was in sixth. Um, and so a lot of my friends had siblings that were her age. So we were like one compound group, and we were both in choir. We both were like, we just ran in the same circles. It was so weird. It was the weirdest thing ever. Like, yeah.
That's funny. I know you talked about this in the book and you just talked like brought it up right now. Three against one. And you know, usually the typical like family relationship, such with me and my brother, like the older sibling always wins. So seeing that dynamic is so different. How do you think that that like happened?
I have no idea. Like they were powerful and they knew they were powerful and they had my parents like wrapped around their fingers. And it just was one of those things where they would just like get us in the stupidest things. And Precious was taller than me. That was the thing. I hadn't hit a growth spurt. So Precious was taller than me. So like she would physically assert her power and her dominance over me because I was still short. And one time we were in elementary and she put us like on the wrong bus home because she didn't remember our bus route. And I was like, we ride this bus. And she was like, no, 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 we ride this bus. And so a teacher saw us arguing and was like, you need to listen to your big sister. And I'm like, I am 2 years older than her. Like, please stop it. And so we literally got sent like across town on the wrong bus and didn't get home till like 6:30 that night. And then my parents were like upset at me because I didn't do enough to stop it. And I was like, I was trying, but nobody was listening to me. Nobody ever listens to me.
Oh my gosh. How did you
That was
guys
the
get
issue.
home?
Um, they sent us a shorter bus.
Okay.
Yeah, and we rode across town on it, and yeah, we
That
pulled up in our neighborhood, and it was yeah, it was yeah. I won't get into it, but yeah,
it was a whole mess.
it was.
Of course. So what was it like unveiling like all of these childhood memories? How did you feel doing it? All of that.
You know, it was really nostalgic, and um, I talked to them about a lot of the things that I was writing. I didn't let them read the chapters before they were out and everything. They still haven't read. Well, they've read one or two chapters. Um, but yeah, I was just like recounting things. I was like, guys, y'all remember when this happened? And it's funny because Courtney and Kalina, they won't remember certain things because they were younger when these things happened. But Precious is normally like a pretty good record keeper historian to have like on my side. So
Mhm.
it's always fun to, even though the things that Clint and Courtney don't remember, it's just fun to be able to retell them to them and put them in those moments. So it's been really fun, and I think that we had a really good childhood. And I think sometimes you don't realize and appreciate those things in those moments until you're removed from them, because adulthood is like the absolute worst. It's the absolute worst. I don't recommend. So definitely had fun looking back at that era of life.
Of course. Definitely for sure. 1000% agree with that. Reading through it, it's honestly been a journey just seeing like your childhood life. It's just so wonderful. You have so many crazy stories, and I'm like, wow. On a more serious note, I know that you were really affected by your grandma who passed away from cancer. Just
Yes.
can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, how old was she? Um, how the family was affected?
My grandma was, I want to say she had just turned 50, but I may be incorrect. Um, she was very young and it was very sudden. It just literally one weekend, um, she complained about being in pain. She went to the hospital. She was there all weekend, and then she came back and she told us that she had cancer. And I remember the adults like wanting to tiptoe around the issue and not wanting to tell us. And then finally, she just addressed the elephant in the room, so to speak. And I instantly like just remember bawling because every depiction of cancer you see, someone dies and they don't make it, and it was stage 4. And so I, of course, got on the internet like we of this generation do. And I'm pretty sure I got on the equivalent of like a WebMD. And I was like, oh, yeah, like it's really not good news. And literally 1 week later, she had passed away. And it was really hard because we watched them roll her out of our house for the last time. We made eye contact as she was rolled out, and I just remember everything being so still the whole day. And people were in and out of the house, back and forth to the hospital. Our neighbors were in our house checking on us. It was so weird. It was so chaotic. And it was the first time I'd lost someone, especially someone so close. Like she lived in our house. So it definitely had like a lasting impact on all of us. And I think it was really hard to watch my dad hurt in the way that he did. I don't think that it's something that he ever recovered from. And, I think of in his mindset, he's like, I have these kids, I have to like go back to work. It's unfortunate, but life carries on kind of thing. And I think that that way of thinking and processing has kind of stuck with me. And just by example, I've kind of resembled my dad in those manners in my own life.
Mhm. And then just like putting things back and like moving on and not having time to grieve.
For sure, for sure.
Mhm.
I think with my grandmother, it was important to grieve, but I think I had that space because I was a kid and I didn't have those responsibilities. And, I didn't owe anybody, just packing it up and pretending it didn't happen the next day. Whereas I think he felt that pressure and I didn't feel that. So my grandma got to mourn, and it was, of course, how I started writing and where the introduction to that came in. Um, so I was fortunate to find that, but I don't think everyone in my family found those outlets to grieve.
That's honestly it was so sad to read. I have the same occurrence. My mom at the exact same age had cancer, also stage 4, but I'm really happy that she was able to live, but I couldn't imagine just losing someone even that young.
Yeah,
Um, it's just it's a lot on a kid especially. And I don't think that it's really talked about really that much either. It's like losing someone really does affect, you for the rest of your life, especially that first loss is always the hardest.
I still like, I'm sitting here like getting choked up about it a little bit. Like it's
Yeah.
still, yeah, it's like those first, like your first
Mhm.
love, your first heartbreak, your first death, they're just permanently ingrained in you. And no matter how much time has passed,
They'll
they
always
still hit sometimes. Like it just happened yesterday. So yeah,
give you time to breathe if you need it. But yeah, I definitely agree. Those firsts, and that's what this whole entire book almost feels like. You're just introducing all your firsts. So I can imagine
hmm
like it was probably super nostalgic to do so, but also it could be extremely painful as well. Because they're really hard experiences to go through.
for sure.
Um, Let me see. When you were writing, how much did you start writing like every single day? Whenever you like really started hit the ground running, and how much, like how many hours were you writing every day?
Ooh, um, on a good day of writing, I was writing. Okay, I'm gonna take this out. I have a nose cuff, and it's just not cooperating. Um, on a good day, I was writing maybe 5 to 6 hours.
Oh
I was
wow,
more committed to like I wanted to write 2,000 words a day. That was kind
that
of
was
my
your like
goal.
goal.
Yeah, and that's a lot. Like that's a lot of words to churn out. But of course there are the days where you just feel burnt out, you get off work or you leave school and you don't feel like doing anything. So there were definitely like days in a row, multiple days in a row where I had not touched, the manuscript or anything like that. Um But yeah, it was really about finding balance. And at first I was like, I gotta hit the ground running because I had wanted it out at a certain point. So that was really what that goal was about. But after a while I was like, just make sure that you're writing just so you have enough story to choose from, and then you can consolidate down to the good, and what flows and is seamless and transitions from one era to the next.
Yeah, for sure. When you were writing, I know that your book is formatted from like childhood. Basically, it follows that timeline for the most part. But when you were writing it, were you like kind of just jumping all over the place and then had to like fix that up at the end, or how did
Oh, for sure. For sure. Sometimes it's so crazy because I came into this and I said that I was going to write the chapters about like my earlier life first because I was like, these are less traumatic to me. These are going to be easier to write. But it was like the complete opposite. Like all of the trauma, there were things that I hadn't talked about. Some of these things were things that I was admitting for myself for the first time. So when I started writing those parts of the book, I like really went to town. And then of course, when you are dealing with heavy subject matter, I'm like, okay, now I can go and do the lighter stuff, so I can have fun with writing and tell like the comedic things that are like gonna make me laugh and not just feel so heavy. I wanted there to be balance in the book. And I was being very conscious though to make sure that if I was in maybe a darker place here, that maybe I found a darker moment on the other end to write about, because I think that it was very important for each chapter to have its own voice.
Mhm.
Um, I really strived to make that a reality with the book, because they represent different eras of life, and every era comes with like a different attitude and a different voice. So that was really important to me.
Of course, yeah. Um, so with your whole entire voice, it's like very prominent throughout your whole entire your whole entire book. You can tell whenever like you were like, oh, that shouldn't have happened. Like there's
Yeah.
always a little comment after like every sentence. It's so fun. It was such a great read.
Thank
Um,
you.
but even in the moments where it was a serious topic, you can almost like feel the emotions that you were feeling like as you were typing it. And I feel like that's what's so raw about, reading this whole entire book, and like the experience that I got from that was just like your whole life. Like it's crazy how much raw emotion is in every single sentence.
Yeah, I thought that that would be the approach I'd taken to writing the book at first was really more biographical. And I'd sent someone a chapter just to read, and they were like, this should feel more conversational. Like this is you telling your story. Somebody should feel like if they picked up your book, that they just had a full conversation with you. So what really helped was as I was writing, I was talking to myself. And so I was imagining telling stories to people as I was writing. And so, I have a flair for dramatics and, theatrics when I'm telling stories. So I was like, okay, well, just write it on the paper, like exactly how you would tell somebody this, the little side comments, all of that. Just write it down. And then if it needs to be cleaned up and polished, you can go back and do that. But like just put it authentically on the paper and then worry about the technicality of everything later.
And I can definitely tell that it's definitely a conversation throughout
Oh,
the
for
whole
sure.
entire thing. That's what it feels like. It's actually crazy. Um, at the end, I think it's of the second or first, I think it's the second chapter, we get to really dive into your family dynamic, and we learn as readers that your father isn't, actually your dad. And
Mhm.
at the end of that, you said that you had no intention of learning who your real father is. And I just wanted to like know your thoughts on that. Like, why do you believe that?
Well, I know who he is, but we don't have a relationship and we've not communicated. Um I This is my thing. The biggest thing that I kind of took away from the book is that there were parts of my life that I needed to be accountable for. And before I had I'm not gonna say a blanket victim mentality, but it was just easier for me to see how others had wronged me in situations than being able to see how I had also wronged myself.
Mhm.
Um, and I think with that situation, I think that there's not been accountability, and it's easy to point the fingers and blame people for why maybe he wasn't involved and active. But, I'm of the belief if you have a child that it is your mission to connect with your child and to be active and available for your child. So I think the ship is sailed, and I have a dad, so like I'm okay,
Yeah.
on that front. Um, I have the dad I was supposed to have, so at the end of it, there's not really much that I think I could get from that relationship at this point in my life.
Yes, for sure. And seeing your relationship with your dad throughout the whole entire book has honestly been so like refreshing to see. He seems like such a like wonderful person. Your whole family, like they just seem like such wonderful people. Um, so getting into the next chapter, I wanted to hear your own thoughts on popularity growing up because you went from being like bullied to then in middle school being like, at the cool kids table, you said. So let's chat about that.
It was insane. It was, like Disney Channel shows or like any show really,
Mhm.
where obviously the cast members are the main characters of the high school, but they're not
Yes, of
necessarily
course.
like popular kids.
Yes.
But like it seems like they're everywhere and everybody knows them. That was kind of how I felt. I was like, I'm here at the nucleus and the focus of this school for some reason, but I don't feel like popular. But I don't know. I think it was just I learned a lot from elementary school and I internalized a lot of things. And I was like, okay, this is a chance to rebrand. I was in a new city, new school. I was a little older. And I was like, I'm gonna rebrand. Like these people don't know me. I know the things that maybe didn't work for me personality wise back in the day. And so I'm gonna take a new approach to things. And when I got to San Marcos, I think that I was just making everybody laugh. Like I've always thought it was funny, but they thought I was like hilarious. And so once I saw that they were accepting of like my initial humor, I was like, okay, we're gonna ramp it up. And it became big. Like my personality became huge. And it just parlayed into all these doors opening and like all these opportunities. Like I literally walked up to the journalism teacher and I was like, I want to do the school news. Like I just want to do it. And she was like, okay, like I don't see why not. And I was like, no, they're gonna love it. And they did until everything hit the fan. But
I know you talked about that. I was actually gonna
mhm,
ask, why did you stay to fight? Like you like despite to stay on the team. It wasn't even your fault.
it wasn't even my fault. But it was like I had gone into the studio that day and a decision had been made. And it goes back to that thing of if I'm the only one saying it didn't happen, but the entire room is like, and it's not like they were blaming me, but nobody spoke up. The Okay, so for what happened if because I know some of you guys haven't read the book yet.
Oh yeah.
So I was on the news at my school, and one day one of the camera operators, he was really tired and he had like been dozing off while we were filming. And then one time his head like swiveled, like when it swivels, and it swiveled down and so did the camera and it rocked off of the stand, broke. Like we were able to finish the show, but that was it. Like the camera had rocked off the platform and just was done for. And so the next day, the journalism teacher came into the room and I thought like he was gonna be fired. Thought there was gonna be some tutorials on how to use the equipment so we didn't do this again. But I got fired. And I don't know. I thought maybe he would step up and like take accountability, but he didn't. And I got fired. And it was so humiliating going back to class because they're like, the news is starting and stuff. And they're like, why are you here? Like, aren't you supposed to be on the news? And I'm like,
I was fired.
yeah. I'm like, you have no
No.
idea. Just, you have no idea what just went on behind the scenes. Yeah, be quiet. Watch the news. Stand for the pledge. We have to stand for the pledge now.
Oh my gosh. When I read that, I was like, I was so mad for you because you didn't even do anything wrong.
I was
I was so,
crushed. I was crushed. They like took my world that day. They really did.
you really enjoyed that, it seemed like.
I had a blast, and they only let people do like 2-week terms, like they were
Mhm.
rotating. But I had been the anchor for like months at this point, so like I had a residency. But it
They
is
loved
what
you.
it is. It is what it is. If we ever have a middle school reunion, we'll have some things to discuss, and I have some feelings I have to express to some people.
Yeah, of course. And then you said it actually was beneficial because you were in football at the time,
Oh
even though you
God,
don't like football.
that was like the most excruciating thing I have ever done in my life. Like I was this short, skinny, like frail little boy. And so the whole 18 failed off because, you know, they were more focused on football than like anything in school, which is fine, but not in my detriment. So we got moved up from B team to A team. And I was like, oh my God, like I did not want to do this. And now I'm like with the best of the best, like the boys who have been in, you know,
Football ever.
yeah, like the camps and stuff since they could walk. And I'm like, this is gonna be a mess. And those boys were bigger, they were faster, they were tougher. I was like, oh my God, like y'all look like college pros. And my coaches would be like, run at him, Zachary, tackle him. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not gonna do it. So I would like literally run off the field when those boys were charging at me. And so eventually I got put on special teams. So like I would only come out when we were kicking the ball off. And like
Nice.
I think they would catch it and run. I don't know what was going on. I was like, look, I don't think I have to do anything. I wasn't defense at the time. I don't think I may have been, but I didn't know what was going on. But it was so, yeah, you know.
Do you even
And
know what positions you were playing?
I'm telling you, they had me on special teams, and that was it. I don't think I had a position. I think they wanted to limit my time on that field, which I did not mind because I had no business being out there.
Definitely. I'm not a sports person myself, so I know exactly what you're coming.
I appreciate like athleticism and people who are athletes, but it's not something
Doing it.
I prefer to do.
Yep. Um, let's talk about middle school relationships. Your thoughts on that?
Oh. Middle school relationships. That I don't know like who we were basing our relationship off of, like what we saw that made us act those ways, or yeah. Like it's just so funny to me. And the young lady that I mentioned in the book, I actually had some contact with her recently. But we're good now. Like that was so long
Of
ago.
course,
it's
yeah.
it's so funny. Yeah, I have a whole new sexuality. Like we're in different places. We're
Of
just in different
course.
places. But yeah, no, it was funny. It was really funny. And I think that was another one of those things that kind of like elevated me in my position at the school. Everybody
Mhm.
was living for the drama because we would like get into it in front of everybody at the school. We were
Yes.
we were that couple. Yeah.
Yeah, you made it very clear. You were like, we were a toxic relationship and
Yeah.
everybody knew.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Are you talking about like fights in the hallway? Like that kind of, oh my goodness.
Fights in the hallway. She would like come to my house. I'm like, you don't even drive. Like, we don't have cars. Like, why are you here? And she would come just to argue, just to yell. And it was just, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I can't live like this. I don't know how you want to live like this, but I can't do this.
Of course. Oh my goodness. That's so funny. Let's see. Going into, I think, the next chapter already, um, growing up in the Black community in your eyes, have you seen, a difference with media now being involved? Do you think there's been a big change in a good or a bad way? How do you feel on that?
In like regards to like Black Lives
Seeing
Matter and everything.
changes. Yeah.
Um, I think that what I'm appreciating more is the stories that normally wouldn't make it in a traditional news cycle do by way of social media. And if things become big enough on social media, they do become a part of the traditional news cycle. I would still like to see that element of it removed and our news just become national news because we live in the nation. Um, but the media, it's an institution, and institutions have to fall and be rebuilt. And I think that we're on the cusp of the media regime falling in America, or maybe even the world. Um, but I mean, for every bit of progress that I feel like we do make, I feel there are so many things that we haven't even addressed that we're still so far away, and we have come so far, and that's what I think is so crazy to me. Um, yeah, I had someone tell me basically to be lucky that I didn't live in the time of Rodney King or Martin Luther King. And I just thought that was one of the most asinine things I've ever heard, because my plight doesn't stop just because I'm not facing those conditions at surface level, because people in the community still are being treated exactly that way and are facing repercussions by the government at that same level. So I think that there are some people who definitely are a bit dense about things just because we live in the same neighborhoods and go to the same schools, and that kind of thing. So for
For
yeah,
sure.
it's
No, and I
I don't really know if that was answering the question,
no,
but
definitely was a good answer.
yes and no, to be short.
Because also the media has contributed to a lot of people being able to hide behind a screen and say whatever they want,
Hmm.
even though what they're saying is wrong. And it's a place where opinions are allowed, but some opinions, no, some opinions are shouldn't even, they're just not even humane. It's ridiculous what I see.
They're not, and I can't believe. Listen, we would have to have a separate thing about freedom of speech and everything, because I need everybody to go back and read what the freedom of speech actually entails and
Means, yep.
protects. But we won't get into that here. Um, but yeah, no, I definitely have seen some people voice opinions, and I'm like, to have and hold this opinion is one thing, but to know the climate that we live in and to know that you're posting this to mixed audiences, that's what's like insane to me. It's like almost opening the door and welcoming in that energy. And
Mhm.
that's a bit off-putting to me, I think.
Oh, for sure. And like you were saying before, we have come far as a society, but if you think about it, it's almost scary to see like that really wasn't that long ago.
Mhm.
Like it's barely even happening. Like the wheels are like slowly turning, and that's what's so crazy. And I feel like most people are just thinking about, wait, we've come so far, so everything's fine now. No,
Mhm.
we have so much
So
more
much.
to go, and we could
Yeah.
always go further. So looking back into like thinking that we haven't come that far or it wasn't that long ago, I think is also a good point of view to have so that
Yeah.
keep going.
I mean, my great grandma, she never went to a segregated school, and my grandma integrated her school. So, I mean, I definitely have those points of views in my back pocket, and I understand that everybody doesn't have them, but these people are still alive. They're still members and pillars of our community, and they're accessible. So on both sides or on all sides. I think that reaching out and learning more about history, not just your history, but history is important.
For sure. And I definitely think that's something that needs to continue to be taught, in schools and everything, for sure. Um, Let me see. Do you not know why, or do you know why you moved back to Houston, or why you had to go back, or did your parents never tell you why?
Um,
Because you said
well, well, okay, I know
there
why
was
I
a
moved.
lot to that story, but
Yeah, I
originally,
know.
when you first had to
Originally,
move.
I just think it was them just wanting us to be together. Like my mom was like, "You're my kid. Like you're not gonna not live with me. Like that's crazy." So I really think that was like the origin of why I was not gonna stay in San Marcos. But of course, it bloomed into so much
A
more.
bigger situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you talked to your grandparents since then? How's
Oh yeah. We've talked since that. We were able to find resolve and things like that, but I don't speak with them now.
Mhm.
I think that my sexuality has presented, I don't even know what to call it. I don't want to say challenges because I feel like,
It shouldn't even be a challenge, yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I've felt disrespected, disregarded, and kind of bulldozed. So we haven't spoken in maybe going on 2 years.
Yeah, wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy. Well, I was gonna get into this later, but since you brought it up, and I feel like this is a perfect leeway into it, how was that experience for you whenever you did have to come out to your grandparents and, feeling that almost of like not being accepted, by your loved ones that are close to you?
It was really hard. And I think that when I was gearing up to have these conversations, of course, you have to be prepared for people not to be over the moon about things, which is stupid, but you still have to be prepared, especially knowing them the way that I do. Um, but it was still really hard. And I think I had coached myself through what I would say and what I would do. And then it happens and you freeze and I felt like a child again. Like I couldn't speak up for myself. And I was grown at this point. Um, and they were also doing me a favor. They were letting me stay in the house. So for that summer. And so it was one of those things I kind of just went with.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, I'd gotten so much support from other places and other people. I think it was easier to kind of look past that. And I knew that, or I guess I was hoping that their love for me would weaken their opposition.
Of course.
But I think I quickly realized I was not dedicated and committed to putting living my life to the fullest on hold for anyone because I'd done it for so long. So I quickly stopped caring about people's feelings and accommodating for them.
Which is so sad that that's something that you have to like take into consideration when people decide to like express their sexuality. And even when you said in the book something that I like really was like agreed with whenever you said like people shouldn't even have to come out. Like it should just be people love who they love and it doesn't matter. And
Right. Like if I bring home a girl today, then I bring home a girl. If I bring home a guy, if I bring home
exactly.
a non-binary person, then that's what it is. And it
That's
just,
no questions, no
yeah.
questions. Just
But yeah,
hopefully one day the world will get there. But like I
hopefully
said, the
I have
wheels
faith.
I have faith
Slowly,
slowly,
slowly.
slowly. So back into the same chapter we were in before.
Hmm.
Um, for your choir camp, how did you end up fundraising that much money? Like what was the fundraiser that y'all were doing? Because you just said that you fundraised enough money for yourself and then a couple other students. So how did you do that?
I think we were selling candy, like, to the students,
Oh, wow.
which was, like, not allowed. So we were like, yeah, we were going rogue a bit, to make this money, but it was, like, honestly leaving us so fast, like, the product was leaving so fast. And, there's hundreds of kids in choir, and we're all selling candy, and we're all coming back every day like, "We need a new bag, we need a new bag, we need a new bag." So it was like an operation, and some of the kids, they just weren't people. They weren't people persons like I kinda am. So I was like, "You know what, don't even worry about it. Like, I've already hit my goal. I will go back on the streets for you, and we will get you to camp." And so, yeah, I every day, if not more, I had at least one bag to turn in, and I was ready for another one. Some days it's 2 bags a day.
Dang, you sound like a rich
I was
kid.
on it. I was on it.
That is awesome. You talk about like singing and choir a lot, and I would love to know if you're still, like doing that today, and how that's almost kind of helped you like throughout your whole entire life. That's like almost an outlet type of thing, like how writing has been.
Definitely music is like one of the first things I think I fell in love with. Um, I remember we were going to San Antonio one day, and my dad had played Lauryn Hill's CD, her one and only CD, and I was like 6, and I just she told me a story. She transported me to where she was. I felt everything, and even though I didn't understand some of the words and the messages she was conveying, the tone of her voice, the timbre, the layers of the harmonies and things like that, it kind of told me what I needed to know and painted that picture. And I thought like, oh my God, this is so powerful. And so we would go like to Walmart often, like on these road trips, and my dad would get CDs, like when CDs were a thing. And so he'd buy his CD and he'd be like, you get whatever you want. And so I was always like willing to just get something from a random genre, like, reading song titles or if the album art appealed to me, just so I would be able to take that in more. And so, I mean, you listen to a lot of music, you try to sing back with it. And one day we were like going to Target, and I don't know, I just started singing This Christmas or something. I think we had just watched the movie. And my mom was like, you sound kind of good. And I was like, stop it. I was like, Leah, stop it. Um, and so from there, it just kind of blossomed. And, we had to be in choir, like I think elementary, our last 2 years, anyways.
Mhm.
And my choir teacher in elementary, she was like, you should try out to like be in choir in middle school. Like I hear something there, but also, yeah. So, but music has been super important. Like all the titles in the book are song
Titles,
titles.
yes.
Yeah.
I noticed that. I can definitely tell throughout like the whole entire book. You have a very like much love for your music, and you've incorporated that through your titles, which is so
Hmm.
cool and so fun to read. I've like loved each quote and how it like relates to each chapter. That's crazy how you even
Yes.
like thought of that. Did you automatically know which songs you were gonna put into each chapter? Did you like while you were I know that you said that you were listening to music while writing.
Hmm.
Was that like the songs that you chose? How did that work? Did you choose them?
Not always. And sometimes um I would listen to a song like completely removed from the setting of writing. I'd be like, oh my God, that's a potential song. I was like, I don't know which chapter, but this could be something. And honestly, like if I had not been in like a crunch of time with the book, I probably would have sat down again and like been like, can I change this? Like, can this be a different song? Like, does this fit? But I love all the choices that I made, like ultimately at the end of the day. But I think that there were just so many things. Like, yeah, I could have named each chapter like 5 other songs.
Yeah. I feel like that's how every writer is. They're always like, oh, I can always go back and edit this, but
Oh, for sure. I I wanted to like go back and still be making edits on the book, like last week. And then people were like, "Oh my God, I got my book today." And I'm like, "Okay, it's over." Like, it really is over now.
It's over. You can't. It's out.
Yeah,
And it's perfect of what I've read. I know
thank
that as
you.
a writer, we're just critical of like
Appreciate,
everything.
yeah.
And that's just how it always is. Um, so getting into Texas State and like wanting to go to this school or to Texas State. Sorry, I go there. um, you said that the day you got accepted was your birthday and that you're superstitious.
Mhm.
But what other ways have you been superstitious with like making your decisions? You're like, oh, well, that happened, so nah, I have to do this. Like, what are examples?
Um, I just believe in signs, and I really feel like if I'm still enough, which is hard for me, so sometimes I miss the signs, but on the rare occasion that I am still and like just waiting for the universe to communicate, um, it the universe does tell me what I need to know. For me, that's a me thing. But I was raised with like Southern grandmas on both sides. So and religion plays a part into that, and believing that God will be on time and he's an answer for everything. um so yeah, I kind of look for signs with everything, and even with the book release, like there were a lot of signs that I used to get me through the process.
That's awesome. Yeah, when is your birthday? When did that happen?
October 16th.
So that's when you found out. That's awesome.
Hmm.
Remember when I found out.
What was your like, did you want to go here? Was this number one for you?
No, my number one was UT, but I already knew I wasn't gonna get it. I got capped and this was my second choice, and I knew like, man, I'll just go there.
Yeah, we all have that dream school that we're like, I'm gonna do it just to
And
do
it wasn't even the school for me. Like I just wanted to be in Austin, to be honest.
it. Hmm.
I was
But you're
about to go to
close.
I am. So that's why I was like,
The
okay,
proximity, yeah.
I was gonna go to ACC, but they didn't have a good like RTF or like electronic media program. So I was like, oh, I'll just go to Texas.
Mm, yeah.
And my brother goes here, so it just worked out. Enough about me. I noticed that you had a major change. You started with business and then you
Yes.
ended with public relations and I think, wait, hold on. It was public relations and then the other one.
um, Public relations, and my minors are communication studies and pop culture. Oh, I almost forgot.
So how many did you change your major like a ton of times? Like how did that happen? How did you get to that point?
I only changed it once, but what happened was I was hanging out with my friend Hannah one summer, and I'm like over here crying about my classes, and Hannah's like so excited about her classes. She's telling me about like all these pop culture classes she's in. I'm like, I like pop culture. Like we literally are having conversations about pop culture and all that's happening in the world, like what's trending. Like that's what we do. We're housewives, buffs, and all that good stuff. And so I was like, what do you want to do though? And so she started telling me about publicity and things like that. And I was like, if you know me, like my thing was always to walk around and talk about my brand and what my brand was. And so, like unintentionally, I was like this branding advocate before I even switched over. And I was like, I think I can do that. And I think I can be really good and I can really help people. And I have a lot of ideas about how to market and sell things and sell people. That I think that sounds really wrong to say, to sell people, but um you know what I mean.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
and so yeah, it happened. It had to happen though. I was so unhappy as a business major. I think that this was something I had wanted to do since I was like 10. And I had grown, of course, like in the 8 years since 10. And I just hadn't taken into account that older me wanted different things than younger me, because I had this plan and I was like, I can't deviate from my plan because my plan is my plan. You plan to follow the plan. And then I was like, but you know what? The plan is not conducive to my mental health. Like I don't see myself doing this long term. So I had to switch.
Yeah, of course. What was your original plan? What was your childhood plan? Tell me about it.
I was gonna be like a real estate mogul. I was gonna get my real estate license. I was gonna get my brokerage license. I was gonna have my own firm, and I was gonna be like the number. I told myself I had to be the number one producing agent in Texas. Like that was the goal.
Wow.
And then I was like, oh my god, like I don't want to do that. Like I don't want to do that. Like the housing market is so volatile and it's up and down. Like when it's good, of course. But like right now, like I'm kind of kicking myself that I'm not in the business now because houses are
Everyone's buying
selling.
a house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but I have no regrets. I really don't. I'm where I need to be. I'm where I want to be. And being able to have gotten the formal education on publicity and PR helped me do what I've done with this book because I've done it all by myself for the most part. So
Awesome.